Hello everyone, today we will be talking about ATS systems. For those of you who may not be familiar with ATS systems, it is essentially the resume screening software used by many companies today. And in the present day, many of these systems are enhanced using AI, and this brings forth many ethical dilemmas. Jacob, will you enlighten us?
Absolutely. Historically, we've seen several ethnic and gender groups marginalized in the hiring process. We know that there's a great disparity between the earnings of men and women, and some ethnic groups get discriminated against in the job hiring process. So when we're thinking about implementing ATS systems into our hiring process, this bias needs to be accounted for.
Yeah, that's a great point. And why are ATS systems even accounted for in the first place? Well, it's because companies get an overwhelming amount of applicants and they want to screen through them efficiently, and that's why they use the ATS before it gets to a recruiter. However, when they get automatically rejected based off either bias or formatting, they can disqualify qualified candidates, and that may not be the best for the role. Ian, you want to elaborate on that?
Yeah, so if there's a bias in that role, you can screen a potential candidate who has got good qualities in their resume, and it's just not a fair chance for other people who have the opportunity to expand on the resume. And I believe personally that's not a fair chance for everybody, exclusively under the EEOC, which states that everyone has the opportunity to get a job in this country. And I'd like to pass it back to Chan on that.
Yeah, so about that, also one thing if you notice about the ATS is that formatting matters a lot. You can have all the right keywords, but if you have certain formatting such as tables in the wrong spot, the ATS doesn't detect that, and even if you have everything in the right place, if it's formatted in a way that ATS did not recognize it, you could get eliminated even if you have all the right keywords.
Absolutely. And another thing to consider is when you do make a mistake with your resume, wouldn't you have a right to know why you were rejected? If you spoke to a human about this, they would be able to take one look at your resume and say, hey, you messed up this part, you didn't quite fit the role, we were looking for something with this experience. But if you get rejected by an ATS system, who are you going to email?
Now, we may be thinking that as eligible and qualified candidates increase, the companies would need to automate this screening system to an extent. It may be considered by some unreasonable to insist on using human eyes to review each and every resume when the technology to automate this process exists. However, on the other hand, applicants to many of the jobs in the job market today submit hundreds of applications, taking time in many cases to do so manually without the help of AI, and even the use of AI requires a human review by the applicant for each and every resume sent out to ensure that it is tailored to the company's requirements, and also that it is the type of resume which the company would not immediately reject due to being AI generated. Now, this introduces a double standard where candidates are expected to put in the human work and the human labor while the companies get a pass and are allowed to automate the screening process despite the enhanced bias caused by ATS systems when the computer is the one who is trained on existing biases and is responsible for the economic and financial future of the applicants.
Absolutely. And as our hiring process moves more and more online, it's important that we address the threat of bots and automated applications to these companies. Now, ATS systems are absolutely a solution to that, but does it come at the cost of additional bias being reintroduced back into the hiring process? This is something that we have to analyze before we begin mindlessly introducing ATS systems into the hiring process.
Yeah, one other perspective is from the student's perspective. So when you see the ATS systems, students are encouraged to add more keywords in order to just pass the ATS screening. So what happens when that happens is that oftentimes it leads to lies on resumes just to fit the job description and pass the ATS.
I would say personally, if anybody uses ATS in this room, I would say I've used it a lot. I've been encountered with ATS, and I believe personally that it's not a good system, that we should have humans behind the resume building systems, and we can see who's using resumes and what's going on behind them, and I can back the channel on that.
Yeah, that's a great point. You guys have anything else to add on it?
I would say that if you're going to implement an ATS system, there should be at least some manner of human review. I think it should primarily be used to analyze people's skills and not so much the historical data on which resumes get picked based on formatting or something else that's trivial.
Yes, I think in the first part of that is to identify the flaws of the ATS, and that way you can identify the biases and the gaps so companies can fix those.
Well, we hope we've given you a lot to chew on, and that in the future, discourses around resume screening systems are aware of the advantages and the ethical limitations. Thank you.
Thank you so much.